Okay. طب أستاذة سارة جت يا نور؟
احنا دلوقتي we're trying to I believe يعني let's wait for 2 minutes so
Okay.
all the participants can join and then we can kick off the meeting. And
Sara
could join us whenever she can, but she is facing a technical problem.
Okay.
Bear with us 2 minutes and then we'll kick off the meeting.
All right.
I think we're ready to go. Mohamed, if you'd like to. I think we're ready to go. Mohamed, if you'd like to go.
I think Nadia need to switch off the sound والمايك عندنا.
كانت مشكلة عندنا الكونكشن عندي كانت وحشة وغيرت الديفايس اللي كنت داخل منها معلش يا دكتور.
No problem.
It's okay. Okay, Mohamed, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you so much. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, BIBA members, guests, and of course our dear panelists and speakers for today. I'm quite lucky to be introducing such an interesting session, and which is always a hot topic for us here in Egypt. And I thank Khaled for being absent and giving me this honor. So on behalf of Khaled Nusser and the BIBA board members at large, I'm pleased to welcome you for today's webinar on the industrialization and SME development. I'm sure all of you know that the SMEs, and again, we don't have accurate figures, but a lot of studies have said that SMEs may be contributing to more than 80% of the country's GDP, let alone the informal sector or the parallel economy. Who knows how much that will even add, or if it's calculated indirectly within. So that's quite a figure that strikes anyone when we talk about SMEs in Egypt. Likewise, we also know that the number of SMEs, again, let alone the informal sector, in terms of registered businesses, have reached a level of almost 1.7 million businesses, contributing to 45% approximately of the total establishments in the private sector. Of course, it is expected that SMEs is to be the backbone for the existing and future growth of businesses, both on the domestic and the foreign investment perspective or level. We've seen a lot of efforts being exerted lately, whether from the governmental side, whether from IFIs, and of course the banking sector, to provide as much support to such a sector in the country. I will not be the best to talk about this topic, but before I introduce today's session further, I cannot miss thanking our gold sponsor for the event, which is Industrial Development Group, IDG. So thank you very much for your sponsorship. But also have to acknowledge our event partners for their continuous support to BIBA, which are CIB Bank, Egypt, Polaris Parks, and of course, QNB Al Ahli Bank. Thank you, all sponsors and event partners, for your contribution and support to our great association. So thank you. I'd love to thank all those that have attended today and took the time to come and attend such a webinar. It's a great honor to see a lot of friends and such prominent figures that can talk about this sector. I think at this point, and without any further ado, I can confidently leave this to my dear friend, Mamdouh Afia, who is the head of the SME group of the National Bank of Egypt and who will be our today's moderator. And I don't think we can find a better moderator to moderate such an event like this. And I will leave it to you, Mamdouh. Lucky you can be the one introducing such speakers and panelists. So thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mohamed. I'm very, very honored to be with all the BIBA members today. And I would like also to thank you for choosing me to moderate this interesting session. I hope it's going to be interesting for the members and actually come out of it with fresh ideas and at least refreshed for our day-to-day businesses. The topic itself has been very carefully crafted, and it's talking about two main components of our economy. The first one is industrialization, which is a huge topic and actually an entire science of its own. And then intersecting with SMEs, which is also a very, very important topic in today's the economic development in Egypt. So before introducing our distinguished panelists, I would like to just shed some light on how I have chosen to run this webinar, not to be too deep into one and single element of the SME industrialization issue. However, going around the different elements that supports such endeavor, which is industrialization, and as well coinciding with the trajectory of SME development. The Ministry of Industry actually has published in 2016 its industrial development strategy that covers from 16 to 2020. And I think this document actually forms a very nice foundation for our discussion today, because according to that strategy at the time, it was talking about five important pillars. The first one being the industrial development, which is our topic for today. The second would be micro, small, and medium enterprises and entrepreneurship, which is also our topic for today. And then you would have export development, development of technical and vocational education services, and then the governance and institutional development. I guess the first three pillars are of extreme interest for us today. And the panelists today also represent years and years of know-how and knowledge and experience in those three topics. So now, without further ado, let me introduce our distinguished panelists, not in a particular order. Dr. Reem Saady from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and she is the Regional Manager for SME Finance and Development. Mr. Tarek Fayed, QNB Al Ahli, who's the Assistant Managing Director and Chief Business Officer. Mr. Shady Williams from IDG, and he's the Managing Director. Rashwan Hammady from CIB Egypt, he's the Head of Retail Segments and Products. And Mrs. Sara Battouty, ECOnsult, I pronounced it right, who's the chairman, and Mr. Mohamed Azzam, who's the Managing Director of the Export Credit Guarantee of Egypt, EGE. We are going to, I mean, if we take this topic to the limit, I think an entire day will not be sufficient. So we have only 1.5 hours. So we hope to have 2 rounds of questions and comments, and then leave enough time for the questions, and hopefully we can answer them. The first issue that I would like to discuss would be a topic called SME within the industrial development context. How do we perceive the SMEs within the industrial development context? So the first question to Reem Saady, perhaps you can shed some light on the SME landscape. I know you are a scholar of the SME ecosystem, and you've been in this system for a very, very long time in Egypt. And I know that the EBRD also supports very vigorously the development of the micro, small, and medium enterprises. But before going into the details of what you are doing, perhaps you can shed some light on the platform and of this important sector, as Mohamed has presented, but more from a statistical point of view, from where you have seen according to our discussions before. Please, Reem.
Thank you, Mamdouh. Hello, everyone. Lovely to be among friends and colleagues and ex-bosses, Mamdouh. So yes, as Mamdouh said, I would just start by sharing a very quick slide on Egypt SMEs landscape in general. And I have deduced this information from the literature that I have been reviewing for my thesis, for my PhD. So to start with, we have very limited data in Egypt. That's the main challenge that everybody's facing and policymakers are facing specifically. There is no data. There is no baseline to start from or to compare to once we have achievements. So if you allow me, can I share a screen? Yes, I can. So just trying to see where the data is. Okay, 1 second. I need to. So as a beginning, how many SMEs, the first thing that we need to know, how many SMEs do we have in Egypt? This, to start with, is very confusing. So when we review all the data that we have on Egypt, everybody refers to Egypt having somewhere between 2.5 SMEs. Now I have this screen. Okay. 1 second. To go back to Zoom.
Just for time management, Reem, let's try to compact our presentation into 5 or 6 minutes.
I'll do it very quickly.
So that we can have an entire round. Thank you.
Okay, so the landscape. Okay, so can you see the screen? Am I sharing the screen now? Yes?
Yes, so, we can see the screen.
Okay, how many SMEs do we have? We started by saying 2.5 up until 2018. The latest census we have is 3.9 million business units.
Reem, the screen you are sharing is
not here.
Is the Outlook.
Is your email.
Okay, so please.
Okay, maybe I'll stop sharing and I'll just talk, or maybe I don't know how to do it.
Yes, yes. I think if you can just shed some quick light.
I can just shed some very, very quick data. So first of all, what we are talking about, how many SMEs do we have in Egypt? This figure is contradicting. Up until 2017, everybody was referring to something between 1.5 to 2.5. The latest census is 3.9 million business units without the informal. This is a huge number. I don't think that we know exactly what we're talking about. The second thing, the definition of SMEs. We've been confused in more than 9 different definitions from 2004 up to 2019 when we had the law, and the law adopted the central bank definition. So finally, we have one central definition for SMEs. So at least we all know who are we talking about, who's an M, who's an S, and who's a medium, who's micro, who's small, and who's medium. Contribution to GDP, another very confusing indicator. So we have studies referring to it as low as 25% and as high as 80% in very respected published articles. How much exactly we have? We don't know. We know that we have almost 10.5 million employees / labor in the SME sector, but how much are they contributing? What's the value added? That is something we also don't know. The only thing that happened and was of a lot of value was back in 2012, there was a national census that was done by the central bank, the EBI, the Egyptian Banking Institute, and the Faculty of Economics and Political Science. And there was a sample of 36,000 SMEs. Of course, this is very little compared to the number of SMEs that we have, but it's a representative sample. And the sample shows, I wish I can share the slides. I'll send them later and they can be maybe shared by everybody, is that we have an accumulation of SMEs in Sharqiyya governorate, for example. So we have 16% of our SMEs in Sharqiyya, followed by Cairo, Alexandria, and the rest. The other interesting thing is that the manufacturing composes 51% of SMEs. So 51% of our small and medium enterprises are in the manufacturing. 40% in trade. The rest is distributed among agriculture, tourism, health, construction, and building. So 51% is in industry. And when we talk about industry, what's the majority of industries that SMEs are engaged in? 38% is in food and beverage, followed by 14% textiles and garments, 11% leather and products, and then we go back to wood products, paper products, chemical products, rubbers, etc. That data is 2012. I'm pretty sure that it has changed a little bit now, and you'll find more into the technology ICT sector. Are we exporting? Are our SMEs exporting? Only 6% of our SMEs are exporting. The rest are not exporting, which might not be a bad thing because it's not bad to actually fill in the gap in the local market. The most interesting one to all the bankers on the panel is, back in 2012, how many SMEs were actually engaged in banking deals? How many of them were in the banking deal? So from the sample that was taken in 2012, only 47% said that they are dealing with banks. They're only dealing with banks. And out of those percentage dealing with banks, 22% had facilities. So you have 47% out of the sample are actually dealing with banks in general, personal accounts, credit cards, whatever. But out of those 47%, 22 said that they actually have bank facilities. How many of those having bank facilities have problems? 16%. And according to the sample that was drawn back in 2012, the problems were coming from many required collaterals, high interest rates, which I don't think applies anymore, hard and lengthy procedures, many documents required, many collaterals required, and others. As I said, unfortunately, the data we have is in 2012. So now we're almost 8 years later, things have changed. So many strategies, so many initiatives. I think we need an updated census, but unfortunately we don't have it, at least to the best of my knowledge. We don't have any updated data on the landscape of Egypt. So over to Mamdouh.
Thank you very much, Reem. I mean, these are very, very important statistics. I'm sure if we take the same snapshot nowadays, we'll see a very big difference due to many things. I think the first one would be the initiatives conducted by the Central Bank of Egypt and the very subsidized interest rates that everything has benefited from them. And it was, I mean, very much due, and the timing was very important. I know that some economists would not agree that this is the best way to go about it. However, on a practical side, I think this has encouraged a lot of SMEs at least to try and step into a bank and get a loan. And once this is accomplished, they become, I mean, consumers of financial services, basically. What I would like to talk about actually today are 2 to 3 pillars. The integration of SMEs in the industrialization or industrial development movement. Number 2, the local value chains and how can this transform and evolve to export and global value chains. And the third one that I would like to cover also is talking about innovation and what does this mean. So just to give you an idea where we're going with all that. Now I will give, the mic to Mr. Tarek Fayed. And in light of everything we know already about the SME sector, about the legal, regulatory environment, about the economic environment, please give us an idea, how do banks and financial institutions perceive and approach SMEs within the industrial sector? I know that many banks, especially the investment banks, not the state-owned banks like the one I have the honor of working with, were challenged to increase their share in their portfolio of SMEs to up to 20%. So would you tell us a little bit how this was perceived by your bank, or give us a general idea, and where are we going with this to the future? Tarek, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mamdouh, and it's a pleasure to be among distinguished colleagues. Let me try to throw some light on the points you raised. First of all, maybe I'd like to stress on the fact that banks perceive the business with SMEs as an important integral part in their business models. We have to recognize that the SMEs of yesterday's are today's the big names. When I used to start working in the bank, and that was decades ago, many of the big names that we know about now and follow used to be at the time SMEs. So banks now, I think, are fully aware and recognizing the fact that what they start to do now and what they start to work with as an SMEs, excuse me, is the future big names and big players. The second thing is the fact that SMEs business is quite profitable. So yes, there is a social dimension, there is social responsibility, but still doing business with SMEs is quite profitable. Not only because of the initiatives launched by the Central Bank of Egypt, but because doing business with this segment of the market is quite fees generating, interest income generating. So it's quite profitable business. Having said that, one of the major obstacles that has been facing banks in this area is convincing the SMEs clients of the value added that they will reap, they will recognize if they become bankable. Second, finding out this type of clients, these clients are usually hidden. You need really to dig them out under the surface. They do not promote themselves, they do not announce themselves, they keep very low profile. The third thing is educating this type of clientele. What does it mean to be a banking client? What you need to do, how you need to present yourself, how you need to show the bank that you understand your business. And the fourth element is the disclosure, the amount of information that they have and or they are ready to disclose and share, and the quality of documentation. And of course, we all know that banks are sort of bureaucratic institutions that they need to pile on papers and make sure that things are in order, whether for regulatory issues like KYC and anti-money laundering, or for decision making. Putting all these elements in a bundle, we can see the challenges facing banks to penetrate this segment and being able to do sizable and good business with them. At the same time, I started with the fruits. This is a very profitable business, and it is a long-term investment that you planted today and you reap the fruits over time in the future. In a nutshell, in our institution, and I think in majority of the Egyptian banks, banks have been in Egypt very open-minded to the segment, very welcoming the burden and the investments needed to be put in place to do business with this segment. It's time-consuming, it's human resources consuming. Even now, we all share the approach of the need to digitalize this segment, and this segment is pretty much suitable for full digitalization, and it's the right thing to do now. So lots of investments are borne by banks, lots of efforts, a number of hurdles and obstacles, but in the end, there are good business opportunities, good profitability, and good future and promising investment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tarek. I think you've put a very strong foundation for the appetite of the banks to work in the SMEs, and I think we are still in the very early stages of launching this and considering it as an integral, not saying an integral, but as an important pillar, as much as the large corporates. You've mentioned the obstacles, the awareness of those clients to comply with the normal banking procedure in terms of disclosure, etc., and our way forward in terms of digitization. I will pick on what you have kindly mentioned later on with Mr. Rashwan from CIB. But before doing that, let us also look at in the backdrop of the industrial development at the issue of industrial land, which is part of the strategy that was laid by the Ministry of Industry 4 years ago, and I think they have actually gone quite a long way. So perhaps I would like to ask Mr. Shady Williams from IDG about what he thinks about the industrial map of Egypt that has been advertised so many times, and the strategy of the Egyptian government in availing such industrial lands, and the effort to strike some public-private partnerships with private industrial developers in that respect. So, Shady?
Thank you very much for having me. Distinguished guests, thank you for a nice introduction. When it comes to industrial development, I think the effort was launched a while ago when the government wanted to accelerate the process of having or availing land to industrialists, and that's when the private sector came in to proceed with developing infrastructure and taking place and providing the services needed. And that way, that accelerated a lot of the availability of land for industries. And actually looking at the international figures and going back to what Reem said, I would actually make a strong claim that the majority of our businesses are actually in the micro, because micro is considered $10 million. So from 0 to $10 million considered micro, which is approximately 160 million Egyptian pounds of annual. So the majority of our SMEs are actually still in the micro phase. What does that entail on industrial development? It entails that you need to provide them with a lot more services. You need to provide them with a lot more facilities, whether it's banking, whether it's in-house facilities and services, so that they can actually move into and grow in that. And over the time, you would see that with the majority of businesses we've seen, we happen to have a clustered type of industries based on the availability of raw materials. So when we're looking at the sectors, because of textile, garments, and leather products, and food and beverage, this constitutes a little bit over 60% of the markets that we currently have in industrialization. Now, over the past few years, we've seen an increase in construction material because of the current status of what's happening in Egypt. So a lot of SMEs or micro companies are getting more and more into it, whether it's building materials, building blocks, windows, doors, you name it from that. So that being said, as an industrial developer, we need to always adapt and change the model and the type of services that we provide in order to accommodate all these new entries coming into the market. and try to accelerate their process to eventually go through the process of moving from micro to small to a medium, and then eventually growing big. And we've seen that industrial development is really focused on the micro and the small, because the bigger companies, they actually don't need industrial developers. They have the capacity to go ahead directly and get land straight from the government and establish their businesses on it, because they're big enough to do that. They don't need an intermediary or compound or a developer in between the dealings. And they're able to get different benefits directly from the government because of the size of business, the number of employees they employ in there. Moving more and more into the future, industrial developments are looking at how can we ensure that we have a digital system that is going to accommodate all the current changes. Our factory is going to be the same size, or we're starting with much smaller sizes and more advanced technology to cope with everything that is going on. We see warehousing, logistics becoming a major role in the future. And all of these are things that are on top of industrial development minds that we're currently looking at and seeing how we can help. Addressing the point of how the government is dealing with that, they've also introduced models where they are tapping into markets where the private sector is not really interested in tapping in. So when we look at recently launched small workshops of 150 square meters up to 700 square meters, and they're available for rent, you're going to see that in a lot of the Upper Egypt area or in the Delta region, where industrial developers have not been even, they don't have any presence there, they haven't entered into that area. So that sense is really somewhat related to the public-private partnership, where also developers are being called and asked to go in and manage these parks versus actually developing them from their point of view. They would come in and they cooperate with the government in management of these parks. And that has proven to be a great model so far, because it creates this fluid experience that is passed on, that trains government employees and gives also an edge to developers to really take advantage of these SMEs. When they grow, they can move into their parks. I hope I've answered your question. I'm not sure if there's anything else that I can add.
No, we still have a lot of time to recap on that, but thank you, Shady. I think you have touched a very, very important elements is the role of the industrial developers and how the government is filling in the gaps where private sector developers might not be at the moment. They don't see the feasibility of launching their services there. You said that also the major client of yours is on the micro side, which brings me to the question of industrialization. I mean, and you said also about clusters. And I think that there are no efforts in Egypt in general to drive modernization of the industry. Of course, we have the IMC and everything, but they're all focused on existing business models, on existing companies. And we will address later in this session the question of innovation. Modernization is practically adding value to your industrial produce. And it is better also to base it on natural resources or resources that are available in the country in order to be globally competitive. In order to synchronize all these elements together, I think that needs a moderated effort from the government and as well as from the representing institution of the industrialists, being the Investors Association, as well as the Federation of Egyptian Industries. I'll go back very quickly on the nice study, the industrial strategy, and it had in its components actually industries that are required for deepening in the industry, which was the engineering industry, the chemical industry, the textile and clothing industry, the building material industry, which we've just mentioned. And these need technologies in order to actually develop their know-how to be competitive and actually to link within the existing value chain within Egypt. And another element was the integration inside value chains that the study has, or the strategy has mentioned, and they have literally mentioned or precisely mentioned the recycling industries, the packaging industries, plastics, mining, agriculture, leather feeding and furniture industries, and again, the engineering industries and the building material. So perhaps I would take from what I said is the more focused specialization in the services and the different element that would represent the industrialization of SMEs. And I will actually ask Mr. Rashwan Hammady from the CIB about what he thinks about the interpretation of the banks with regards to SME development and the value proposition to the industrialists. Let's focus on the industrialists, knowing that these are effectively the activities, the industrial activities I would like to focus on, whether be it for export, for deepening the manufacturing or else. How does the bank integrate with this? Is this something that you would consider in the bank's business model while addressing SMEs? Or do we produce products and offer products that fit all kind of industries at the moment? So, Mr. Rashwan, the mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Mamdouh. I want first to share that the few mistakes that we've done before and what we learned from those mistakes, Mamdouh. The problem that we started. There are two challenges in SME in banks in general, in my opinion. One internal and the other are external. External, Reem explained this pretty well, and then طبعا Tarek طبعا غطى الحتة دي, covered this very well, from the market challenges, the transparency, financials, the informal sector, the willingness and the acceptance of bank finance, etc. But there is a big challenge within the institutions themselves, within banks, on this creature called SMEs. Is it retail? Is it corporate? Is it a hybrid model? Is it one bulk? Well, as you said, Mamdouh, is it one size fits all? Or we need really to dice it and slice it to have the right value proposition? Many banks, including CIB, have started this journey many years ago with having a credit-driven or a risk-driven policies and programs, and then try to find the customers that fit to those policies. Usually, it ends up with not so much success in terms of volumes and customer satisfaction in terms and towards what you offer. So that we find that it's very critical to dissect and slice the segments. You cannot have one offering and one understanding across segments. You really need to differentiate not only according to the industry, whether it's manufacturing, trading, textile, chemicals, etc., but also by size. You cannot have the same level of due diligence and follow-up, etc., on a £1 million loan and same as a 20, 30 million pounds loan. The sales model and the credit approval process and the service model should be different. What we learned through the years that we need to be very simple in our approach with the customer. You cannot just complicate things and file documents, as Mr. Tarek said, because documents will not really protect you in terms when the risk happens. What would protect you that you really take care of the onboarding process. You really take care of monitoring the accounts, and make sure that you make the right returns from other products. That's the key actually, because on the credit itself, you make very, very slim margins if you add in all the costs for the onboarding and underwriting and monitoring. So you really need to make sure that the system itself would allow the bank to capture the fair share of wallet of the customers, fee business, cash management, etc. That's critical. So for that to happen, you need to have a very, very solid service model that is convenient for the customer. So because if the customer is not happy with the way the customer is dealing with the bank, he will not get you the cross-sell. So that you need to have those value propositions in place, whether it's digital banking, payroll management, the call center, the reach of the branches, those kind of value propositions, which we added recently, what we call value-added services or business solutions. I'm sure Reem would cover this in depth, because EBRD is our experts in that. We're trying to offer a network of solution providers like marketing companies, finance, logistics, etc., that to give access to customers based on their need, because they need capacity building. by virtue of being a small or medium-sized company. Definitely small is different than medium, and we always get mixed up between what we offer for the small and medium. But definitely in general, SMEs need support when it comes to non-banking services. So just not to take too much time of the panel time. Yes, definitely industry and industry-based businesses are the most favorable for banks in general. There is a general theme from risk managers that they will always prefer having financing to a factory rather than a trader. There is this theme that occupies everybody's mind. However, it's always the challenge of finding those credit-worthy customers, managing your operations and service models that suits their needs. And in the same time, we have to, we discussed this briefly a couple of days ago about what the government is doing towards planning of who produces what in which area. Because there are large corporates who are usually dominating the upstream and the export business, etc. But there is very, very low coordination of feeding their value chain before production and after production. So that this is something that actually I think needs more clarity and guidance from the market, from the government, and I guess also it needs more decentralized approach in terms of planning, giving incentives, etc., to the governed rates rather than having it only centrally planned. It needs to be go towards the local government, because they have better knowledge of what's happening, and they can compete actually to attract more investments to their city. I'm sorry for taking a long time.
No, thank you very much, Rashwan. I think you shed light on many things with regards to the value proposition that the banks can extend to SMEs in the industrial sector. As you said, we are still suffering from the let's say the slight incompetence of those entrepreneurs to deal with banks, and it is our role also to give them the right capacity and the right knowledge to be able to access finance, which is readily available. I think that the problem is not the availing as much as is the mismatch between our instruments and the clients themselves. You've also touched on a few things. Of course, in this entire discussion, there is an elephant in the room, which is the informal sector. And I will just go back to what Shady was saying about the industrial lands. There is a huge movement nowadays in order to legalize those who are sitting on lands for a very long time, what we call وضع اليد in Arabic, but this has been a practice that's for a very long time. And there's a huge movement to do that. And I guess this will help industrialization, because ideally it will attract those informal industrial activities into more mundane and more human, actually, industrial states in order to proceed and to continue doing what they want. I'm not sure, according to what I've seen so far and according to what the National Bank of Egypt, that's the bank I'm in, according to what we see, I don't see the right coordination still happening across the entire Egypt, because the land is availed, but there is no link between the old occupants of the unusual territories migrating to those new lands. The incentive is not there. So this has to do also with the legalization, which brings me also, Rashwan, to your point about the responsibility of the local governance. The governors themselves there is a huge opportunity for the governors to play the role in developing their own governorates, because they are sitting there. It is just a matter of equipping them with the right staff and the right apparatus that will help them do this part of their job, as we see elsewhere. I'm not sure if Sara Battouty has joined. Nadia?
Yes, Sara is there. She has joined us.
Excellent. I'm happy to have you, Sara. I don't see you on my screen. However, it's good to be with you. And I would like to take this discussion to another dimension, which is the future, more or less, which is the green economy. What does this mean to SMEs? I know that I'm not being fair to you, just giving you 5 minutes to explain a little bit. But however, we are talking about industrialization, which is taking the industrial sector a notch up in value addition and integration in global value chains. Okay, and what does green economy as an overwhelming concept represent to those industrialists? Sara?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. And hi, Reem.
Hi.
Good. So let me just start by saying that Reem, through the EBRD, would probably agree with me because she's a staunch supporter of my company. So the green economy is a nurturing economy that is set to deal with social and environmental impacts within the DNA of how it resolves problems. The future for SMEs, and I'm saying this because I have a micro company that designs green buildings on the one hand, and I've established a startup that takes scrap waste material and designs furniture for export. So I'm at the heart of this kind of upcycling, recycling, energy and water preserving industry. The green economy is going to be a very different thing to look at in the future, because at the heart of it is something that is unseen, which is research and development. It's difficult to quantify how much of small up-and-coming businesses invest in research. As Reem was saying, as everyone was saying, data is very, very difficult to have, let alone forecasting data and thinking up of what the future needs. For myself, I see overheating and water and solid waste management are going to be a market to tap into, because we have to have solutions for these kinds of problems. But the data given to us and disseminated to us is not enough for us to be powerful enough to walk into a bank and give you a forecasting. This is what the future is going to look like. These are how many green buildings Egypt is going to require. So the green economy, which will grow definitely in the construction sector, the healthcare and well-being sector, agriculture, and also artificial intelligence. These are the ones that are emerging post-COVID as not the winners, but the ones, you know, to look at with room for growth. Certainly in Egypt, we have, it's a very sophisticated approach that is there for healthcare, but definitely in green, blue economy work, solid waste management within the private sector, within the micro companies, seems to be like walking into a lion's den. You know, where do you start and with whom? Is it the ministry, or is it the fund, or is it something global? So the more we disseminate information about the market, the more we enable SMEs or micro companies like myself to be able to do their research and come up with a model, which is what we've been doing. We've been around for 10 years. 2 years of that, there was no way for us to define what we do as a company, because there is a traditional list of what do you do? And the future is not like that. You have many companies that are hybrid companies that do strategizing, that do building, that produce a product. And so the flexibility that we need is an opportunity for investment. The R&D is a very important component. The entire world is looking at R&D today. It is the one that is going to move us in the future. And it's also the one that will be a high employer for the informal sector, because we engage with informal and formal, we engage with government, we engage, but all of this takes its toll on a small company. So I think for the green economy, innovation is its baseline. R&D becomes the next layer, and then seeking the opportunities of, you know, do we need more mobile phones? Do we need more garments? Do we need, you know, what do we need? Do we need to resolve an issue of water scarcity? And how can we upscale that? You know, that's a question out there. So I think SMEs are there to grab onto this And in partnerships, this will really come up with some fantastic companies that should grow within a couple of years to become, global influencers at this rate. I'm very positive.
Thank you very much, Sara. I think you've shed light on a very, very important elements, which is green business. That's an opportunity for the future, for SMEs in particular, because of their agility to grab and grasp the opportunities. However, lack of information is an important barrier that needs to be discussed. And I might add the awareness itself, awareness about what a green economy is among SMEs in general is something that's going to hit them, either if they are exporting, other new laws are coming in, etc., etc. Not to mention the environmental problems that we are going to face in the future, like water scarcity, like global warming, etc. I will make a point on innovation, and then the second question, when we finish this round, we're going to address it. And then finally, in this round of question, I would like to ask and invite Mr. Mohamed Azzam to talk about a very important and very specific slice of the SME industrialization, which is how to create an export-driven SMEs. You are in the area of financial services, and through this type of financial services, how can we contribute to transform SMEs into exporters? Azzam,
well, thank you so much, Mamdouh, for the introduction, and the esteemed guests for the great contributions. I noted with a lot of interest the statistics made by Reem and Saady regarding the percentage of SMEs that has pains in getting access to finance. And looking at the contribution of each of you, I can see clearly that we have a supply side problem. Access finance has to do mainly with the tools that are being used currently in deploying credit in Egypt that is attached to the corporate credit, what we call it the brick and mortar, and how the change in these tools using digitalization and AI can help the process of sanctioning to SMEs to be seamless, fast, and effective. And using insurance, which is something we do as an export credit agency of Egypt, we are trying to enable access to finance to SMEs by giving a guarantee to financing organizations interested to explore the SME asset class, giving them the comfort that the default will be guaranteed by us. And with a special orientation towards export and industrialization, the Export Credit Agency of Egypt is looking to expand the industrial base of Egypt by allowing guarantees to interested entrepreneurs who would like to procure technology from outside Egypt, and helping them to get a subsidized finance from local banks. We can cover up to 7 years of tenors, and we are also looking at CAPEX from everywhere in the world, and we are also focusing on the post-shipment aspect, which after the factory is up and running and they start producing production, we can help them also to export outside. So coming in today from the perspective of providing solutions to the pains we discussed all across, we want to start by doing something about this problem, and we want to use this guarantee to the benefit of all SMEs in Egypt that are interested into venturing into industrialization using our services.
Thank you very much, Mohamed. I think it's a very, very important point here, which are, unconventional financial instruments that most SMEs are not aware of, and how this could contribute to opening export markets. The benefits of exporting, as we all know, is not only to gain from the export activity itself as much as it's to be exposed to the global market and learn from it and actually start the internal exercise of conforming to different industry standards according to the markets targeted, which is a part of the industrialization, and it helps the industrialists and the SMEs enrich their knowledge. I'll go for a very quick second round. We are running a little bit behind, like 10 minutes behind. So I will also ask you to be concise, but I would like to take a look into the future. We all know what each others do. We all know what is available in terms of services, in terms of activities in the SME ecosystem. But I will ask each one of you to give me an outlook about how their area of activity and competency will look like 5 years from now, putting into consideration that we are contemplating industrialization of the SMEs in Egypt. So I will ask Reem first to tell us a little bit about how she sees. Reem is responsible for, I think it's the biggest capacity building and business development services to the SMEs at the moment in the country. I would like to ask her how those services should look like 5 years from now. How do we migrate from the very conventional that we've been doing like 10 and 15 years into a new generation of BDS? Reem.
Okay, thank you, Mamdouh. That's very interesting. Actually, I've been doing this exercise lately because, as you know, we've been doing the same thing for the past 7-8 years. And you can see the change, and you can see how the world is changing, and even how Egypt is changing. So what we're now thinking of, what are the indicators? What are the impact that we're assessing? So for example, what are our donors looking for? Because as you know, we're based on donor funding. So what are donors looking for? They're not looking for the normal annual increase in projects anymore, but actually, let's be more sophisticated with looking into green economy. Do we have an impact on the environment? Are you being innovative? Is the productivity of your labor increasing? So it's not only about increasing your turnover, making more money, or making more turnover with little profit, but actually, are you growing in the right direction? What are the sectors that you're serving? So are we serving the same conventional sectors, or are we moving into more innovative sectors, even if they are industry? But are they using more innovative approach? Are they using more automation? Digitization is becoming the word going forward, and it has been proven by COVID also. So now everybody's talking about, are SMEs becoming more digital? Are we introducing new tools to them or not? And all those new terms that are coming, transition impact, even the transition impact points are changing. So we're looking more into IA, into digital solutions, digital options. And the challenge will be, are we moving as fast as the sector is moving? Because the SMEs are moving fast. Of course, there are some conventional ones, but there are a lot of young entrepreneurs, and not even young in age, but young in the age of the industry, the age of the enterprise itself, are moving very fast. We should be as fast as they are. I would do the type of financial products that we are designing with the banks. So of course, we have special financial products that we design for SMEs, like the one we're doing with the National Bank with QNB. So we're targeting youth, we're targeting women, we're trying to have new financial products. But are we also targeting IT-based SMEs that have no collaterals? These are the ones that needs finance, that are probably not going to make profit in the coming 2-3 years, but will have a huge hype after that. Are we tolerating this type of new ideas, of new SMEs or new investments, or are we sticking to the same old type of things, plain vanilla intervention that we used to do? So it is very challenging times. I think COVID came at a time to prove us all very old-fashioned. So, and I hope that we can catch up. So we're all trying to catch up. We're running very fast to catch up with what's happening. And yes, it's going to be exciting times. We're going to see changes. We're doing a lot of changes in our program. I hope to see also changes with the banks, and with Sara is the least one I would worry about. She's already ahead of the curve with her products. So other than that, yes, we're all very challenged. We'll be running very fast. We will be seeing new times and new products, I hope, for SMEs going forward.
Thank you very much, Reem. I think, Reem, you raised a very important questions, which is the role of international financial institutions and international donors and international development agencies active in Egypt, for ages and ages. How far have we benefited from their interventions? And I can see now that they are more proactive. Traditionally, they were the ones pushing the new concepts forward and pushing the envelope. Since we were talking about, ever since the industrial modernization, I remember when I was still in consultancy in the 90s, a business plan was an innovation for any company. We used to give them support to do a business plan. Now, any young graduate from an Egyptian university is quite proficient in doing that. So they are pushing this agenda and helping us. What you just said now is a little bit contrary to what I had in mind, is actually the SMEs and especially the young companies, not the young people running them, but the young companies are ahead of us in the way they practice and the way they plan and in their own vision. We have to catch up with that. And that can only be done, I guess, and this is what I always advocate, and I have to say it also in this venue, that we need to coordinate, integrate, and cooperate, because no one has the entire vision. It's a piece of the puzzle that we need to put together and have a common vision about how and where we would like to go.
One last thing.
Please go ahead.
About the coordination between donors and financial institutions working. So I think what we're also missing, but I think it's coming soon, is one action plan that has defined roles and responsibilities, because we have been attending a lot of donor subgroup meetings, and yes, we realize the overlap that's happening. We realize the lack of synergy, but actually nobody does anything, because again, every one of us have their own agenda that's coming from the headquarters, and we will implement it realizing the overlap. So I think that going forward, we finally, I hope, have a strategy that has been endorsed of SMEs, a national SME strategy. We really need to see an action plan that has all players, that has the banks, that has the advisory providers, that has the donors, and we will all be more than happy to actually fit in the part that's carved for us and not overlap and do the same things over and over.
Excellent. And I also think that the business associations have a very, very important role to play here, and I think they have to step up their game and come nearer to the discussion table. And this is actually being done, but we need more of that. I will go to Shady again about the industrial land and the role of the private sector developers. In view of what we have discussed today, how do you see the industrial development in terms of availing land and availing specialized services going? In a few bullet points, where do you want to see change happening? Shady.
So just to create a basic foundation, a product is created to solve a problem that exists. So, and this is sometimes taken to our advantage in areas. So if we want to see more manufacturing happening, then a problem needs to be created on the trading side to allow more manufacturing happening in place, which means that financing has a better advantage when you are manufacturing versus trading. Land availability and benefits, customs. Why would someone pay customs equally on someone who's trading and someone who's bringing in raw material to be used into manufacturing? So the ecosystem needs to work together to push and enforce more manufacturing, and that would help a lot. And that being said, also on industrial development, I don't think today there is a major issue when we talk about availability of land. As I mentioned, with more SMEs, there's less bigger land needed and more smaller lands with more solutions that are needed. So an industrial developer, instead of having a big chunk of land of 3 million square meters, maybe we can have 3 separate parks of 1 million square meters to accommodate these SMEs coming in. So having a complete ecosystem in place would really drive the business towards an angle where we want to take advantage. Having more R&D in place would actually create better innovation, more products that would resolve that problem that exists. And I think that whole system needs to be looked at from a government point of level, and I think there's a big role for private sector in here to play.
Thank you very much, Shady. I think you've shed some very, very important lights. Is what I would take, I mean, in one word from what you said, are specialized industrial parks that actually carry the proper DNA of an entire ecosystem, where you find in those parks, the development services, the legalization, the authorizations, and everything that those SMEs, so that they can focus on what they're doing and invest more time in manufacturing and in R&D. The question of R&D, of course, is a huge question in Egypt because as far as we can see, and I have to agree, I mean, we will agree altogether that, I mean, the link between the universities and research center and the industry is quite missing there. And there's something to be done about it in order to use all those brains in the universities in the service of innovation and research and development for the industrial world. I'll go back to Tarek with regards to enhancing value proposition in the industrial SMEs. I mean, again, looking like 5 years ahead, and we are all working in the area of digitization, this and that, but will this satisfy all the needs and the requirements of the SMEs of this industrial ecosystem, putting into consideration that we're not talking about exactly tiny companies. I mean, so far the definition of an SM, of a medium enterprise, is the one that has revenues up to 200 million Egyptian pounds, which is quite a considerable and decent amount here in Egypt. And you would expect that those companies do have the proper governance and have the proper knowledge and competency to go to the bank and ask for credit. However, can we be in as banks in providing something that 5 years from now has left?
Mamdouh, no, Mamdouh, I think we lost you for a couple of seconds, so I missed part of your question. Let me try to respond to the part that I heard of your question. I definitely agree with you on the issues, the challenges that lie ahead in front of the banks. But I'm very happy that you mentioned something that I wrote on my paper, and I was very glad that you brought it up a couple of minutes ago, which is the partnership between education and businesses. I think we lack this a lot in Egypt, and in the experience of other countries that has been able to develop SMEs, and not only SMEs, but in order to promote initiatives in a community, in a society, you really need a good and a better partnership between the academia, the education, the schools, and the businesses. And in the businesses, banks would be part of the businesses and benefit from the education and the academia references. I think one of the things that banks need to do in the coming period to be able to improve their value proposition and being able to be up to the progress that is taking place on technology. For one thing, I think partnership with institutions like the EBRD and with people like Reem and her colleagues, I think this is a cornerstone in the future of the success of what we need to do on the SME side in particular, whether to promote SMEs or to improve the industrialization of the business of SMEs. Bodies like the EBRD and similar multilateral institutions bring knowledge, bring experience of other countries, bring what I miss now, what I said about the partnership between academia and the businesses. The EBRD can provide lots of literature, lots of analyses, and this is very, very important. And I think that having Reem with us, the role of the EBRD, if you can plot a graph of how the EBRD has been working during the past 5 years, you can see a skyrocketing graph where you can go really vertically up. It's not a horizontal or upside graph. It's really vertical graph. So this is an integral part that we need banks and the Egyptian community need to invest and partnership and rely more on such type of institution. The second thing is to encourage the academia, encourage universities, encourage schools, encourage this thinking tank to develop models, develop ideas, produce statistics, collect and build a database that we can all use and share information. The third thing, in my opinion, is that I can see that the appetite at the banking sector is also rising exponentially. So it's not only because of a push from the Central Bank of Egypt or because of attention from the multilateral institutions, but I think also during the past period, banks realized that's a good business, that's a promising business, and banks now are more willing than before to further invest, further dig into this activities and this segment, and starting to really see the light, not only at the end of the tunnel, but really the light is very close to us now. The last item I would like also to comment on is that in Egypt we have golden opportunities to invest in the SMEs segment. I mentioned things like the feeding industries. When we talk about industrialization, many countries have developed the SMEs market by directing SMEs to invest and to do business in the feeding industries. We have a huge number of small entities that can help us to produce the material and the components that goes into major industries and so on. The other areas which are starting to pick up, and banks have to adjust themselves and be ready with a good, strong value proposition, is the areas in the high-tech industries, the green economy, the renewable, all these promising areas. Egypt has very good comparative advantages that if we are to invest and direct at a mass and a macro level, SMEs pay more attention and invest into these areas. I mean, India has exceeded us a lot, while 30, 40 years ago, we were at the same base with India. But they invested in people, they invested in educating the people, and they invested in directing the SMEs into areas like the technology and the high-tech industries and so on. And I think banks now know these areas better than before, and banks now are developing and improving their value proposition to be able to give a good offering to startups, whether we talk about high-tech or green economy or renewables, as well as the classical industrial activities. But what I encourage ourselves, banks and the other institutions, to help a deeper, if you wish, a deeper investment in industries where we can really produce a quality feeding industries that can help us not only reduce lots of imports that we can really replace, but also to be an export base for spare parts of automobiles, for small items that can go into sophisticated and advanced equipment. I think we have all the infrastructure to do that. We need just the will of the business community, the support of the banking community, and of course, as I said again and again, the partnership between academia, business, and multilateral institutions. But we have everything in hand.
Thank you very much, Sara. Thank you. I think you've touched on the most important 4 points. I mean, the role of IFIs, but I would like to comment that the IFIs are important catalysts. However, most of them, having worked with one of them before, most of them also seek to transform or transfer the know-how of development to the government itself, This is where we can have a sustainable transformation, not only by the beneficiaries, but also by the government and the legal system. Encouraging academia, the appetite for the bank, and you mentioned very specific areas, which are the feeder industries and the high tech. And I would ask Rashwan, please, can you follow on what Tarek said in 3 minutes, if you have something to add or a comment looking into the future, whether you agree with that?
Sure, I'll be very quick, Mamdouh. If we look at banks, I'm a strong believer in markets. I think markets would always attract investments if they are properly regulated and the coordination and the policies are clear. So that I don't think banks would never fall short of supporting industrial customers or industry-based customers, as long as it's clear for us that their business models and the competitiveness and their profitability measures, liquidity, etc., are intact, and we are secured in terms of, not really secured, I mean like risk reward is making sense. But on the other side, digital, I agree again, I'm sorry again to repeat it again, digital is key, because it will not only help SME customers have better access to financial solutions, but will also help us dedicate more resources and capital and deploy more investments to that sector. So I think the digital capabilities, investments, and build-up is critical, and this is what we're doing now. Whether it's in internal processes, the credit assessment and underwriting, credit offering, non-financial products, etc. That's key, and that is where we have like 70-80% of our mindset towards our manpower is towards that direction. That's one part. Two other things that are happening in CIB, and I think they would really unlock great opportunity in what we're talking about today, is the venture capital. We already have established a venture capital subsidiary, which is doing a great job in terms of finding future prospects for what you call unicorns of Egypt, inshallah, and those will help the banking sector in general and CIB in specific of having innovative and creative and easy access financial products. It's specialized in looking for fintech investments. That's another angle. The third angle is the value chain, which here I'm building on what Mr. Tarek said. The value chain, we believe that if we have the right data models and the right technology platforms, we can unlock great opportunity for the value chain, the feeding industries, the distribution network of the large corporates, which is a critical path for the SME industrialization growth and support. I hope I did it in good time.
Yes. You actually put very, very important points there. Of course, the other financial instruments that are besides that, which is equity in its different forms, very important. The digitalization of the banks and the financial institutions' processes in order to capitalize on the available human resources and giving a better services actually and minimizing cost. And then you mentioned the most important part of what you mentioned is that yes, we are willing to go and finance value chains as long as we know that the government is supporting them. There won't be any surprises on the short and medium term. So I read you very, very well into that. On innovation and how it is an integral element of industrialization. I had a very interesting discussion with Sara a couple of days ago, and she mentioned different business models, services, or products that. Can you hear me? Can you give me a hand if you hear me? Can you raise your hand if you can hear me? Okay, I thought I lost the mic.
She did, Mamdouh.
Okay. So on innovation and how it is an integral element of industrialization, Sara, can you shed some light on your vision? What you see is going to happen in the future from the perspective of SMEs, industrialization, and where innovation fits in this entire process?
Thanks, Mamdouh. No one knows what's going to happen in the future. Definitely the indications are we should be looking more at transformative economies. So we should be looking more at businesses that do something that influences the industries. And that's where you're going to get your unicorn company, because it's going to come into the construction sector, disrupt, into the provision of, healthcare and digitize medical records, and then, you'll have your doctor's appointment via the phone telling you, there is so much happening as well. I definitely think that with respect to Egypt, I definitely think energy is going to be something that we should explore. Desalination, how we reduce plastic waste, and definitely building materials. There are massive funds that are going into revisiting how our current cities work, from their infrastructure, from the way we move around our cities, and how these nodal cities will connect. So there's tons of money to be made in something that's already existing, but what you're doing is influencing behavior change, and what you're doing is influencing that transformation that's going to create how people do their day-to-day stuff. And that's where I see the future we are trying to do. We are trying to make, we are trying to make buildings 10 degrees cooler without using ACs. Why not? It's going to get hotter. The air conditioning industry is not innovating. So why don't we as architects innovate? And that's where I think the future is. And I think banks and lenders in general and donors in general would definitely benefit from having a very open mind into this exploration, not taking very high risks, but also looking at, where the future is, where the consumer is going to be, how do we communicate, and asking these very broad questions to these SMEs, waiting to find these smart solutions. In Egypt, I think there is so much to be done with our cities right now that we don't have to go and build new cities. There's so much that can work, and also with the green bonds. I think the banking sector really supported renewable energy, but now we are past renewable energy. It is the story that was great, and we should continue with it, but there's more to be done. So I think transformation.
May I interrupt you, Sara? But you said something very important. The broad questions that needs to be answered or asked by the SMEs. Very specifically, do you see that we have enough forums across Egypt? Different forums, either it's in the media, either it's in the press, either it's through the association, etc., in order to actually mobilize and harness those ideas and take the country towards, at least awareness as a first stage, and then towards investment as a second stage. Do we have enough forums, very shortly?
No, I don't think we have enough forums. I think we need to increase in that. I think the comms, the communication and everything, I think it's incredibly geared towards a higher end kind of entrepreneur. A lot of the VCs, a lot of the forums that we sit in are spoken in the English language. We need to tap into what's going on in the governance. We need to tap into what's going on with different age groups, being defined that young is not young in age, but entrepreneurs see themselves that they have to be young. So when you're hitting that point, when you are experiential with what you're doing with your business, mid-40s, etc., I think there needs to be a lot of investment in that, especially for women, because women tend to come in as entrepreneurs at a later stage, but they need the knowledge that definitely we need more platforms, definitely we need more forums for that. The more the merrier. It's a big enough market.
Thank you very much. My last question would be to Mr. Mohamed Azzam on innovation and innovative financial services and financial solutions for the sake of industrial exports. Can you just give us also your outlook in 2-3 bullet points very quickly?
Yes, I look with a lot of care for the future of the industry in Egypt. I'm talking mainly about the business case for Egypt. How many of the prevailing industries right now in Egypt will be disrupted in the next 5 years? And are we tapping onto the right type of industries to pursue before we direct all the efforts, SMEs, government, and finance toward these industries or not? The other question regarding the service economy, we discussed in our call a lot about outsourcing in Egypt and how outsourcing is another sort of exports, but exports in the sense of sweat and creativity. So this is something that Egypt is positioned uniquely to play an important role, at least on the regional space, regionally speaking. And the last part, and I will not dwell more, which is going green. Does the future in Egypt is greener in terms of power generation? And my mind here is not on the utility scale. I'm concerned more about the below utility scale production, which is something that is attached to an industrial cell, something that is in the range of 1 mega or less or more. We noticed that a lot of support is going for the utility scale projects. However, there is not enough being done to finance or to support solar panels for industrial parks that are smaller in size, more efficient in terms of production. This is something also we are working hard to support factories in Egypt who would like to procure solar power generation over a period of 25 years, and there is no government involved. So this is the three pillars which are concerning us in EGE for the future, the next 5 years.
Excellent, thank you. I guess we've done two rounds of questions, and a lot of issues were raised to help us a little bit understand the framework under which industrialization of SMEs needs to fall. I don't see it far from what, again, I have a point of comparison with what the industrial strategy of Egypt in the last 4 years have been like. I think we have ticked most of the important pillar, which is the industrial lands development, environmentally friendly industry clusters, innovation development and linking industry with specific research, green economy development, which all of this would be enhancing the competitiveness of the Egyptian industries. In terms of SMEs, we touched on the business development services, facilitating, of course, access to finance. We have a big representation of the banks over here. Export competitiveness, marketing and promoting Egyptian exports. Perhaps we haven't touched it, but more or less the entire elements were there. Reem, I can see you want to say something.
I just want to say something very brief before we wrap up, something more practical and hands-on from my experience with the 1,000 plus SMEs that I've worked with. Industrial SMEs, the main problem is not access to finance. The problem is the business environment that they work in, the licensing, the civil defense, the taxation, which is like every now and then cuts through them and accuse them. So many things that are in the business environment that is very suffocating. Access to land, access to infrastructure, the cost of electricity, the cost of fuel. So these are the things that I think no matter how much we talk about helping them through providing innovative financing solutions, providing advisory services, giving all the support, unless we can secure a business environment and an ecosystem that is conducive to growth and does not put them on a firefighting mode all the time. Because every day, the entrepreneur, the industrial person will go into his factory and keep on firefighting because things are happening that are completely out of the norm, but they have to deal with. I think this is the main problem that maybe we didn't tackle today because it's not in our field of expertise or in our domain. But whatever we keep on doing and we keep on putting effort and trying to help will always be blocked by the not so friendly business environment. And we see this very common. One of my clients, and actually Q&B client, Al-Ukhtain, a huge brand, an impressive brand in leather product, are actually manufacturing in Spain. They tried to manufacture so many times with different tool manufacturers here in Egypt, Nothing worked. So unfortunately, they're doing the brand. It's an Egyptian brand. It's a beautiful one, but it's manufactured in Spain. So, I mean, these are the things that we might need another roundtable for later on. But I just wanted to...
Absolutely. As I said before, this is the elephant in the room, which is the legal and regulatory framework, as well as the informality, which is a product of the regulatory framework. And it's a huge discussion. But let me suggest something as one way of concluding what we're saying. Wouldn't you, ladies and gentlemen, agree, of the panel, agree that in order to address a certain problem, it is very important to put a frame around it. So we put a frame around SMEs, we put a deeper frame around industrialization, and then we put another more tighter frame that has to do with the sector itself. Because each one of them will need a different legal framework, will need a different set of competencies and labor. It's a different export and local value chain integration and so forth. So what we are lacking, in my very humble opinion, what we are lacking in Egypt is focus. When we discuss an issue, I mean, on the government level and on a country level, we are all over the place because there is no focus. And perhaps the link that is starting to happen now between the associations, the representative of the industrialists and the government in order to narrow down what needs to happen. Then you solve one problem at the time. If you solve the problem of licensing to the manufacturers of plastics, for example, and map it up around Egypt, know where the clusters are, know where the informals are, etc., you'll be able more or less to solve the problem. You will be able to build industrial clusters that are, modern and having all the facilities that needed for with the right price. It will give the chance for the bank to have a future look into that sector and actually dedicate products, services, and funding for it. It will give the chance for people like our dear colleague Sara to put all her effort in innovation and green economy and how to apply it on their specific sector. So specialization is a huge lack in the way we do policies. And also, I think, I don't remember who, I think it was Tarek who said, actually empowering the governments, the local governments. They are representative of the central government, but they need to tailor and interpret all those legislations and all those laws and all those activities and trends and directions into their local reality, the reality of the local size. This cannot be managed from Cairo by remote. And then we might start, seeing things happening. I guess what I just said is a more or less of a conclusion to the many ideas and the many elements that we have discussed today. And I would ask also our hosts if there are any questions. I can see one in the Q&A here. It says, can the industrial authorities in Egypt publish a list of new industries that have a priority in this time and the motivations provided to new investors so I can encourage some traders to shift to be industrial? Okay, this is I mean, it has two elements. First of all, the availability of data, where the government is going, where are the industrial parks that are being built, are they specialized or not, etc., etc. So I guess this is, I don't know of anything that is available and updated, but you have the website of the industrial map in Egypt, I know of that. You have the investment authority, who usually is deeply engaged into that, and the Industrial Development Agency, who's also engaged into such activities and such things. But what I marked from this question is a very important phenomenon that we might be also a trend, is the transformation of importers to become manufacturers. And I think this is a ticket for success. Importers who carry a label and distributed in the country for some time do develop an understanding of the markets of such products and do understand the products so intimately that they become quite prone to make their own investments and start a factory and manufacturers in Egypt. And I think this is directions that needs to be actually supported. in National Bank of Egypt, my instructions to all my colleagues is to actually embrace such projects and give them, because we know they will be able to sell. They will never produce something that cannot be sold. They know the forecast. They know everything about it. They know the pricing. So the industrial part can be procured in terms of franchises or what have you, in terms of technologies, but this is an important issue. So whoever said this question, thank you very much for the questions. Are there any more questions, Nadia?
Noor, do we have any more questions? I guess no. I guess that's it, Mamdouh.
All right. So I will just thank all my my panelists and really thank them very deeply for their contribution to today's panel. Reem Saady from the EBRD, thank you very much for your insights. Mr. Tarek, Fayed, and Mr. Rashwan, I mean, two great banks, two very successful banks in the SME domain. So thank you very much for your insights. Shady, I mean, your contribution to the idea of industrial developers and how it should look like is actually an addition and one of the most important pillars. Actually now is making a big noise, the availability of industrial land. So thanks for the contribution. Mr. Mohamed Azzam, I mean, what you are doing is remarkable, and it's going to, I hope, flourish very, very soon. But we'd like to hear more of your efforts. I guess that all the colleagues will be interested to pursue. Sara, of course, I mean, your insights are giving us hope and are giving us a lot of spirit to go every day and hope for a better future. And your questions and your remarks on innovation, your remarks on green and blue economies are spot on. And how does this fit into the industrialization of SMEs? So I would like to thank the panel. And I thank Biba for having me and the panel with you. So
Mamdouh, we would like to thank you as a good and excellent moderator. I mean, you did a good job.
Absolutely, I agree, 100%.
Mamdouh, you were an excellent moderator, and you all were excellent speakers. Before you go, I would just like to announce that Biba is organizing an Egypt Green Economy. It is going to be a substitute to our business mission to the UK. It's going to be a one-week virtual meeting in the UK to discuss the green economy and how we can attract foreign investors to come to Egypt. So we're going to send you all the details, and the green is now, it's very in. Everybody's talking about green economy, about green strategy. So I'm sure you'll find the virtual week extremely important. We have the support of most of the cabinets, and we look forward to your active participation. Thank you again for your support.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
Shukran.
And
bye-bye.
see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.